I see the recording. Hello everyone, welcome to session 6 of the SCMP webinar series. It's my pleasure to introduce Doug Lawrence from Talent C, and he's going to join us today to talk about mentorship. Mentorship is a huge component of business transitions because there's an opportunity to transfer that corporate knowledge that you've been able to retain for the past number of years running your business or farm. We've worked with Doug for a number of years, and every time I meet with him, I learn something new and fascinating, so we're really excited for this webinar series. If you're watching online, this is recorded, and you'll have an opportunity to watch it till the end of this year. And just a couple of housekeeping items. Any questions that you may have will hold till the end of the webinar, and you can use your chat box, or we'll put Doug's contact information if you're watching the recorded version of this webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to you, Doug.
Thanks very much, Allison, and good afternoon, everybody. I certainly hope your weather is a little bit better than what we're getting here in not so sunny Saskatchewan. It's been snowing off and on now for the last, well, probably day or so. So it's definitely, it came a little bit too early for my liking. So what I'd like to be able to do is I'm going to take us on a bit of a journey here, and we're going to take a look at this from a couple different angles. Number one, we're going to look at it from the whole succession planning process. But then more importantly, what I want to do is to be able to set the stage for us as to what mentoring can actually do for you, but also what it can do for your organization as well. And both have, there's a reason for both. So let's first set the stage. So today, roughly 90% of businesses globally are in that small to medium size. So that's obviously a huge chunk of businesses that are out there that probably, you know, are going through some sort of, hopefully going through some sort of transitioning phase. 71% obviously of the owners are preparing to exit in the next 10 years. So that's a startling number, and without the proper planning, whether it's, you know, through the succession planning, succession development process, if that isn't in place, then we're ending up with, best way for me to describe it is, I think of my old hometown, Mesquina, Saskatchewan, where we used to have all the services when I lived there many years ago, and slowly over time the doors started closing as the younger generation decided they didn't want to stay in small town Saskatchewan, and they moved on. And so think of that, picture that if you were to look at that from the aspect of 71% of owners are planning on leaving, that would be 71% of the businesses who are going to close their doors. Only 7% actually have a succession plan. And 70% of business buyers have never bought a business before. So that by itself is a daunting task. And what I'm finding with some of the work that I'm doing with some entrepreneurs most recently is that some haven't really thought their way through their whole business strategy. They haven't thought about, how do I put together a business plan? What's my exit strategy going to be? How am I going to go through marketing? And we'll get into one other area here a little bit later on in the presentation that is actually all of a sudden jumped out in the forefront, and it's something that we're spending a bit more time on. And then no matter who you sell to, you do need a succession plan, and you do need mentoring. Some additional things for us to think about is that 88% of business owners with a mentor say that that having one is invaluable. They would not know what to do without that mentor. And I know that a couple of the businesses that I'm working with most recently, that's been the message that keeps coming back to me, message after message, is I didn't realize the value of what I'm getting out of this mentoring relationship. 70% of small businesses that receive mentoring survive more than 5 years. Double the survival rate of non-mentored organizations. So that sort of, you know, kind of gives us a bit of a flavor, or I guess a place setter for the importance or the significance of mentoring. So, and one of the things for us to think about here is, having a succession or exit plan in place will help you smoothly transition out of your business. And you're also going to, by doing some of the things we're going to talk about, you're actually also going to put into place, you're going to set up the new owner for success. So by having that succession plan and doing the succession development piece, by having mentoring involved in your organization, before you sell and then, through that selling process, it's going to help. And, for me, the big thing I keep always going back and thinking about, and I think about those small businesses in my old hometown, was there was no legacy that was left. They packed up their bags, closed the doors, and away they went. Wouldn't you like, as a business owner, would you not like to be able to have a legacy, to leave a legacy in the community that you're living in, to leave a legacy of some sort? So that's where the whole idea of having a succession plan and add to that succession development place in your business as well. And the whole idea around the succession plan, we'll call it succession plan for now, because I want to explain a little bit about the two pieces there in just a minute. But the plan helps us to address our personal and our business objectives. So without that in place, we're kind of wandering out there with no sense of guidance whatsoever. And succession development is the actual development of your leaders and future buyer. So you have the plan. So here's how I'm going to go through, here's my exit strategy, whether it's, selling to the family or, going out on the open market and using succession matching as a great example, as a means to find a new owner, a new set of parents for your business. Great opportunity for you to plug into that, that capability there. The succession development part, though, is now what are the skills, the knowledge, skills, and abilities, the corporate knowledge, as Allison had referred to. Where is that? What is that? And then how are we going to actually go through that knowledge transfer process in order to develop leaders within the company? And I'll talk about that here in just a second, but also to provide the opportunity for the future buyer. When we do succession development, and really, when you do it, no matter where you are, whether it's a leadership development program, succession development program, mentoring needs to be part of that process, because it's very difficult for people to learn and grow unless they have somebody that they can actually, you sit down on a Friday afternoon and you say, okay, let's have a discussion. Talk to me about what went well, what didn't go well, and what are we going to do differently next year? And so part of that whole process is all wrapped into the whole succession planning, succession development process. So that's something for us to, most definitely think about. So before we answer this question, or before you answer this question, what I want us to think about is, from the aspect of the whole mentoring piece, I want us to think of it from two aspects. There's the personal side, and then there's the professional side. So part of what we're talking about today is obviously the professional side, so the buying and selling of a business. But the other piece, which is typically something that doesn't get talked about a lot, and I have a perfect example of why it needs to be, is the personal side. So I'm just going to real quickly tell you a story about an entrepreneur that I'm working with who was working for somebody else and then decided, I think I want to do this on my own, and embarked on launching their own business. And reached out to me to say, do you think you could would you be able to give me some guidance, some help? Would you be able to tell me what I need to do in order to move this all forward? And so first off, we had to set the ground rules for what is mentoring. So, and this is a good segue into obviously what is the definition of mentoring. But in that particular case, just to give you a sense, there was the personal side that we had to deal with that individual, as well as where the business was going to go. And so we spent probably 4 months, not to scare anyone, but this is part of the reality, is without that mentoring piece in place, we probably would still be wandering, trying to figure out how we were going to become successful. But what we had to do was deal with the personal side, and we spent about four months going through and dealing with some of those challenges, some stuff that goes back, back in time. So that sort of sets the stage for us. So in your chat box, if you wouldn't mind, just take a minute or so to type out what you think your definition of mentoring is. And I'll give you just a minute or so to do that for me. All right, well, I'll help you out just a little bit. Here we go. Okay, thanks, Allison. Mentoring is passing knowledge from one person to another. That's good. Definitely good. So here, to sort of help us all along, I'm just going to pull that box off to the side. So a mentor is a person who, through a trusted relationships, help guide, support, and counsel a person with a focus on personal and professional growth and the facilitation of critical thinking skills. So if you just reflect back on the example that I just gave you, it fits quite nicely into what we're talking about. So definitely has the focus on the personal stuff, and it also on the professional growth. Part of what we're going to eventually end up doing is putting a business plan together. And her initial vision of where she saw herself going and her business going was very, I'm going to say very narrow. And so what has happened is, as a mentor looks past the original scope, because we all have a tendency to get attached to a business plan, or end up with tunnel vision, and we don't, as I sometimes describe it, we don't see past the windshield. So we don't look down the road and see what the opportunities are. So we don't look past the windshield. And also a mentor can actually see the weaknesses in your business model. When I look back at my original business plan and my original business model, it's completely different today, because I had the good fortune of having some real strong mentors that kept challenging me and asking me the questions, and helping me develop those critical thinking skills. So it's really important. The second part to this is a mentor is focused on building those trusted relationships. So if you're always worried about, is this person going to be selling my trade secrets to the competition and all that other thing? A great mentor is someone who operates under the realm of confidentiality, is probably the easiest way for me to describe that. So it's very focused on trusted relationships, very much focused on confidentiality. And obviously here we talk about the long-term investment in a person's development personally and professionally. And mentoring is the quest for meaning as opposed to the acquisition of techniques. So obviously, a trained mentor will have some techniques that they will have acquired, and will use those techniques in helping us discover or what the quest is. One of the best analogies, I have two that I use. The one is that I always tell people that, inside each and every one of us on the call here today, and anyone else that inside each and every one of us are the answers to all the questions in the world today. My job as a mentor, is to help you unlock those doors and open those doors up so that you can actually find the answers on your own. And it's not me telling you how to find those answers. A mentor can open the door, but you must walk through it. And so those are some definite definitions around there. Some key elements, two very, very key elements with mentoring. Number one, the first is building that two-way trusted relationship. So as a mentor going into a mentoring relationship, one of the most important things is to understand that you too will learn and grow as part of the mentoring relationship. And it's more, probably the way for me to describe it is it's effective or modern mentoring rather than the traditional style of mentoring. Traditional style of mentoring was the gray-haired old sage, somewhat like myself, sitting on top of the mountain, passing on their wisdom and knowledge, and basically telling you, I've done it this way for 30 years, therefore go forth and do it and you'll be successful. Versus today, it's a two-way trusted relationship. So I use different techniques. A great mentor will use different techniques in order to help you think your way through some of the business challenges and that you may be dealing with. So that's part of the two-way, the trusted relationship. The second piece, under the key elements piece, is the effective communication. I cannot stress how important in business today, and even with the mentoring piece, add that to it, how important effective communication actually is. Thanks to technology, I think we've lost the art, that capability to be able to communicate effectively with people. I know of a couple organizations that have gone and done an engagement survey of their employees, and one of the biggest things that jumped out, and it's been a reoccurring theme, has been the fact that communication within the organization is poor at best. So, as you're going through your strategy and thinking about, either buying or selling of your business and that, think about the communication strategy and reach out to your mentor for guidance, for them to be able to help you critically think through, how are we going to go about communicating this? Because there's a whole number of stakeholders that are impacted by whatever the decision is that we make. Effective communication includes active listening, so listening and hearing what actually is being said, listening for trigger words in a conversation that may direct where you're going to go next with the conversation, listening for deflections. So I know of a number of people, business mentors, that talk about the aspect that, they can tell that there's some touchy subjects when they're having conversations with business owners because they seem to want to deflect. So you need to be able to recognize when that's taking place and and obviously be able to deal with that. So those are just some of the elements of effective communication that I find that are really important. One other one that I'll add to that mix is the aspect of thinking before we actually speak. So think about the actual aspect of how is what I'm about to say going to be received by the other person. And if I'm questioning whether it's going to be received well or not, then maybe I need to revisit whether or not I actually go ahead and say what I'm thinking. And maybe I need to reconfigure it or do something different, or maybe sometimes, as I find, it's just best not to say anything at all. I have some conversations with my good wife, and there are times when, and I've learned, there are times when, sometimes it's better just not to say anything. It's safer that way. Or my favorite saying is, it's not the hill I wish to die on. All right. So when we talk about a trusted relationship, that is probably for an effective mentor, that's the most important part. And how do we go about doing this? Well, one of the things that we always talk about when it comes to building trust is being comfortable in sharing something very personal. And so if you have, something that you don't normally share with most people, but you can, you'd be willing to share it in this particular piece. Here's a great opportunity. Here's a great place. It can be something, like one of the things that I talk about is, my father was an alcoholic, God bless him, and how that shaped some of the ways that I deal with things today. Building a trusted relationship as well as effective communication are both transferable skills. So when we look at effective leaders or great leaders, we see much the same skill sets. We see people that can build relationships, that communicate effectively, you know, that are humble, that they are committed, and they value the people that they work with. So they're all transferable skills. And you can use these skills, the trusted relationship, effective communication, and actually a lot of the mentoring skills, you can use those in your personal life. You can use those in your role as a leader in the community. You can use those as in your role in any organization, any business. You can use these skill sets to be of more service than what you were before in those different scenarios. Effective communication, we've kind of talked about that now, but here, you know, kind of gives you three topics. So the active listening, so actually listening and hearing, you know, it's one thing to listen, but are you actually hearing what the other person is saying? And are you able to, you know, kind of block out the white noise that's going around the conversation and focus on what the true meaning of it is? Body language is huge. It's really, really important. It's so much as body language can tell you whether somebody has self-esteem, self-confidence issues simply by how they carry themselves. And visualization, one of the things that I love about visualization is it's a great way to do your reflection. So, and by reflection, you can reflect forward and you can reflect backwards. And by reflecting forward, if I'm going to have a conversation with somebody, to communicate effectively with somebody, I will visualize the conversation ahead of time. So that's one way. And then to reflect back, it's all about asking yourself the question, what went well, what didn't go well, and what will I do differently next time? And so that all fits into that whole visualization piece. So those are, you know, when we look at the trusted relationship and effective communication, both are transferable skills, and you need to work on those and practice those. And with, you know, working with a mentor, excuse me, they can help you go through that process and, you know, within your business. And it's also, if you're in the thought process of thinking of selling your business, these are great skills to transfer to the employees that are going to still be there to help deliver the services that are part of your legacy. And what better way to do that than to set them up for even greater success than what they already have. So putting this into place and using mentoring as a means to do it is a great place for us to go. When we take a look at some effective mentoring skills, and I've touched on some of these as well, so passionate, genuine, humble, caring, a great communicator, a great listener, and obviously the Socratic method. And so when you take a look at those skills, they actually fit quite nicely over the leadership skills. And I've always, one of my favorite lines that I like to promote is, a great mentor is a great leader is a great mentor. And so when we take a look at all of these, you know, I want my mentor to be passionate, genuine, humble, caring, a great communicator, a great listener, and someone that can use the Socratic method. And so, you know, and I also want whoever, you know, someone that's a leader in an organization that I'm working in, these are the things that I'm looking for as well. So a little bit about my old buddy Socrates, goes way back into Greek, you know, to the Greek history, and that it's a unique style, a great leadership style, and it's all about asking questions rather than telling. And so the problem is actually broken down into a series of questions that guides the seeker to the answer. So I've got a little quiz for you here. So here are 5 different statements, and I'm just going to give you a minute to quickly go through and pick out the ones that you think are good examples of the Socratic method. So I'll give you a minute to do that here, and then I'm going to jump right back in. So if you're questioning your potential answers, if you're patient, I'll give you them here shortly. So this is a method that I absolutely, once you get using this, Yeah, number 2 is correct. Good. Once you get into the habit of actually using this technique, it will serve you well. 3 is good. So let's, I'll help you out here. You're on a roll. So yeah, 2, 3, and 5. So actually, I've actually seen number 1, somebody's done that, and it just does not do anybody any great service whatsoever. I don't have time to discuss this with you, and you should know what to do. That's actually a true story that actually did in fact happen. And I tried to bail mentoring out of the situation and say, not everybody is like that, but it actually did happen where the young person sat down beside me and said, I got assigned this mentor and this is what they said. And I went, oh, I'm so sorry, and tried to fix it. But I think the damage was far too, was long over, the repair was long overdue, and there was no going back. And then the number, 1, 2, 3, number 4, if I were you, I would just tell your boss that he's wrong. No, probably not a good idea. That is what I did when I was younger. Yeah, and you need to look in the mirror and see where you are today. One of the things I do, I know I kind of mentor my wife more than she may want me to, but one of the things I do is I guide her on a number of different journeys in how to communicate effectively with superiors in order to be able to, the easiest way is sometimes when you have a good idea and you know that it will work well, is how do you convince them that it's their idea? And so that can be done through, obviously utilizing this particular method, the Socratic method. So so what can actually mentoring do for me? Well, it can enhance your culture. So creating a mentoring culture in your organization actually creates a learning and development environment for the organization. And it doesn't matter whether you're a small to medium-sized business or you're a large corporation. All of these are things that you can, certainly put into place today. You're demonstrating your commitment to employee development, to your commitment to your own growth as well. And when employees start to see you, taking pride in your personal and professional development, then they too buy into that. And it also is a great tool for us to be able to assist in the development of leaders. And like I said before, it's a great way for you to create your legacy. And that's one of the things that's really important. And what else can mentoring do for me? Well, it can help in as far as turnover rates. It can actually reduce them by as much as 20% based on, some research that we've done. 35% of employees look for work within 12 months when there's no mentoring available. Now, you may have some, small to medium-sized businesses where that's not the case, but general rule of thumb is that, especially with the Gen Ys, I think MSNBC did a study of some interns, and 85% of them said they wanted to be mentored, not managed or coached. And if they couldn't find that, they would go elsewhere. And I know in a lot of cases, the Gen Y, the younger generation, that's one of the criteria that they use. Well, and 60% of college and university graduates look for mentoring as criteria, to determine which organization they wish to work in. It can also increase managerial productivity by as much as 88%. And there's opportunities there to, to think about mentoring the future buyer and mentoring the next generation. One of the things that we haven't done a really great super job of, and this is something on a global perspective, is the development of our future leaders for tomorrow. So that's definitely something, that we need to be taking a look at. A mentor will work with you through the whole buying or selling process. They'll be a trusted advisor and guide. They'll help you explore your personal and business growth as well. They can also, should you wish, introduce mentoring to your employees as well. And what it will do is it will help you create that learning and development environment. And that's one of the key things in when we look at the trends that are taking place in organizations, no matter where they are or what they are, is the whole aspect of employees are now very much focused on learning and developing and wanting to work in an environment where that is actually in place. And finally, with mentoring, it's a long-term relationship. It can be a long-term relationship. And just, you know, I'm working with some people in a one-on-one capacity, and I'm probably 5 to 6 years into a mentoring relationship with some of them. And some of the businesses that I'm working with right now, I see we're probably a couple of years, I think now, with one of them that, you know, we're into the mentoring process, and we're moving forward, and we've made some, you know, some changes in how we deliver, some pricing changes and stuff in the products and services that are being delivered. And we're figuring out how we can better reach out to the marketplace and get what we actually do out there a lot better. So that's been part of that relationship that I've had with, you know, with some of the organizations. So my challenge to you is that, and this goes kind of follows Simon Sinek. It's in one of his books on It All Starts With Why. Every company knows what they do, what products and services they provide. Some companies and people within that organization know how they do what they do. The how can sometimes explain how something is different or better, but very few people can articulate why they do what they do. Can you explain to your staff today why you do what you do? And just as a hint, it's not about making money. That's an outcome. And so this is all around, you know, sense of purpose. And I'm hearing more and more often every day that, you know, I need to have a sense of purpose. I need to have a purpose. I need to understand that. And going through this challenge, take the time to do this after this webinar. Sit down and ask yourself the what, the how, and the why. And, you know, ask yourself, why do I get up in the morning and do what I do? And like I said, the big hint here is that it's not about making money. That's an outcome. And finally, sort of at the tail end here, just wrapping things up for you, some leadership challenges focused on mentoring. Management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. And outstanding leaders go out of their way to boost the self-esteem of their personnel. If people believe in themselves, it's amazing what they can accomplish. And I can honestly attest to one of the small businesses, it's an entrepreneur business, one that I mentioned earlier. This is exactly where we ended up, was how can you market the products and services that you want to market if you don't believe in who you are as a person, or you don't believe or you don't believe in what it is that you're offering. It's just, you're on a path to not being successful. So Sam Walton's comment is very appropriate. And finally, management is about arranging and telling. Leadership is about nurturing and enhancing. And with that, we'll take any questions, Allison, that may have come up.
Fantastic, Doug. I don't see any questions in the chat box, so I have a question for you. Why do you do what you do?
That's a good question. It's so for me, it is about sharing the gift of mentoring with as many. So I have my big vision, I guess it is my big vision is to be able to make a difference in the world through the gift of mentoring. So helping people and organizations be the best that they can be through the power of mentoring. And it's not about the money.
That sounds like a fantastic why, and it's good that you have that vision and, you know, you're thinking globally, so that's very inspirational. I don't see any other questions in the chat box, so just a reminder to anyone that's watching this webinar online that we'll have Doug's contact information in the comment section of this recorded video. On behalf of Succession Matching and everyone else involved in the community project, Doug, thank you so much for presenting today. I know I took a lot of screenshots for some stuff that we're going to talk about at our own staff meeting next week. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Well, and thank you, Allison. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be part of the Succession Matching team.
We really enjoy having you. So have a great weekend, everyone, and thanks again for joining us.